Previously, the prince frowned. You really love your sister. Kasabin didn't respond to that, but he continued. Even if she becomes someone else's wife, will you still be like this? Hearing this, Kasabin's shoulders trembled slightly, facing away from the prince. He turned slightly, his eyes showing something indiscernible, and said firmly, that day will never come, because she will be with me forever, and she will not marry anyone. Then he gazed at Arlenne and asked, right? My sister. Arlenne looked at his eager gaze and was momentarily stunned, not saying anything for a while. Finally, she insincerely replied, yes, that's right. However, the crown prince thought that her response was due to too much pressure. Arlenne just wanted to quickly end the conversation, hastily interrupting. Your Highness, we are leaving. We will see each other later. The crown prince didn't insist and only said she was welcome here anytime. On the way back, Arlenne spoke first. Why did you look at me like that? Kasabin innocently smiled and asked, how do you think I look at you? Before Arlenne could answer, he pulled her into his arms and whispered, my sister, you are the only person I have in this world. Kasabin could hear her heartbeat at that moment, greatly desiring this feeling with her, but also fearing whether she truly saw him as her brother. He really wanted to ask her but feared that her answer might end everything. In the late night, amidst the raging fire was Arlenne's body, and Kendall had just finished handling her. News arrived from the palace about the Imperial Knight Commander's betrayal, the king's assassination, and the downfall of the empire, with Kasabin becoming the new king. Arlenne suddenly woke up from her dream, recalling what had just happened, still shaken. Kasabin came to her bedside with concern, asking if she had a nightmare. Upon hearing her affirmative answer, he gently caressed her face and reassured, don't worry, I am here. He lightly kissed her forehead and said, I have been by your side the whole time. She asked when they had arrived home, and he explained, it hasn't been long. Seeing Arlenne sleeping peacefully, he didn't want to disturb her and said, please forgive me for carrying you back to the room without permission. Arlenne said it was okay, and casually asked who had helped her change clothes. Suddenly, she froze, panicked, and exclaimed, you said you were here the whole time? Kasabin quickly explained, I was outside while Sasha was changing your clothes. Then he smiled and asked, sister, don't you trust me? Arlenne breathed a sigh of relief and replied, I believe in you. He smiled even brighter, so do I. Arlenne thought, Kasabin's smile indeed softened her heart, but there were things she still needed to clarify with him. She mentioned their agreement before leaving, and Kasabin's smile faded as he began to tell his story. The Highland Kingdom collapsed quickly under invasion due to military weaknesses, with only the crown prince surviving as a slave, his sole purpose now being revenge. Arlenne said, I have something to tell you. Duke Damian wants the throne. Because of our family's close ties to the royal family, we have to be wary of him. So, I need to gather more information about him. Everything I said about loving him was a lie. Kasabin was surprised. So, you visited him in prison for that reason? Arlenne nodded and continued. In investigating him, I found out his father was the one responsible for destroying the Highland, using that prophecy as an excuse for conquest. Although that man is dead, Damian is his only bloodline. Arlenne knew this would reopen Kasabin's wounds, increase his resentment toward the country, but she was also glad they had a common enemy, glad he could trust her and tell her everything. She thought of that nightmare and was very afraid of his response at this moment. Kasabin placed his hand on hers and softly said, one day, when I came to your room, you treated my scar, but I wasn't happy at all. In a life full of resentment and hatred towards this country, I was conflicted and torn when you kept finding your way into my heart. I tried to create distance from you, thinking if I did, you would definitely give up on me. But even though you knew it, you embraced me. His face showed a warm smile. It seems my goal has changed. Now I have another reason to live. He leaned his face against Arlenne's hand. Because you have brought me out of hell where there was no light. Tears welled up in Arlenne's eyes as she tightly hugged Kasabin. He said, you are my salvation. On the other side, Damian started to doubt Arlenne. Why could a noblewoman frequently interact with the royal family? She had mentioned she knew a doctor who could cure any illness or wound. He also thought about the slave who had lost his tongue but was now unharmed, leading him to doubt. The doctor was either connected at a family level or a remarkable talent discovered by Serica family. Damian decided to visit Arlenne again to find out. The next day, Toll pondered his situation. Although he had said a few words to Duke Damian as per Arlenne's request, which could be seen as helping her, how long could he stay here? Would she offer him to the royal family or return to the Duke's household? Just then, Kasabin entered through the door, his face grim as he said, "You clearly saw the Duke threaten my sister at the banquet. How am I supposed to trust you if you keep quiet about what happened that night?" Toll quickly explained that he also wanted to remember what happened, especially since Arlenne had helped him so much. Kasabin warned, "Don't mention my sister's name carelessly." At that moment, Arlenne interrupted them by appearing at the door. She inquired about what had happened and reassured Toll that she wouldn't send him away, leaving Toll grateful. Later, Arlenne found Kasabin in the garden. He said jealously, "You still kept that guy. Am I not enough?" She replied, "Kasabin, you know that's not the problem." Suddenly, Kasabin asked, "Sister, you once told me you loved me. Why don't you say that these days?" Arlenne thought, "I realized too late the weight of love." Kasabin approached to hug her, but she pushed him away, saying, "Isn't that something lovers would do? Not siblings?" He said, "But we are not related by blood. I never thought of you as family." He took her hand and said, "You have been pierced by a rose thorn." Suddenly, he brought her hand to his mouth, licking her finger. She was stunned for one moment, and then she yelled, stopped him, pushing him away. She realized she was angry but unsure at whom. Kasabin, who had disrupted the family relationship she had worked hard to maintain, even on the surface, or herself, for hesitating before pushing him away. Regardless, their strange siblings' play had come to an end. Kasabin solemnly said, "I have always liked you, from the moment I locked eyes with you in the arena. Even though I tried to keep others out of my heart, your touch, your sweet smile, I have come to realize how much they mean to me. You once asked me if I wanted anything, but let me ask you, what do you want? I will become a sword just for you, so I want you to only look at me." Arlenne incredulously said, "Kasabin, you are absolutely insane." She pushed him away again, saying, "I never asked you to see me as your sister, but that's our promise. You shouldn't have said that. We are siblings who went through formal procedures. I am just your sister, and you are my—" She abruptly stopped. She knew his smile was as beautiful as sunlight. She knew this relationship was born out of revenge, but when she started shedding tears sincerely, she couldn't see her own heart clearly. At that moment, Kasabin said, "Get me out of the family." She didn't understand, and he continued, "If you don't like me, you can expel me. I don't want to be your weakness." Back in her room, Arlenne was still thinking about their conversation. She couldn't give Kasabin an answer. Moreover, she didn't even know what she wanted. When did things go wrong? She thought she could slowly affect Kasabin like paint spreading in water, but ironically, she was gradually immersing herself in Kasabin. She never thought about what kind of relationship they had. At that moment, Sasha knocked on the door, saying her father wanted to see her. It turned out that the newspaper reported Kasabin's past as a gladiator. Her father talked about Kasabin, knowing they couldn't hide his past as a slave, especially since he was so conspicuous. Initially, he disliked him, but later realized he wasn't an ordinary slave. He's got a lot of dignity. He's more capable than just reading and writing, and it's really hard to be naturally elegant. I thought he might have been sold by a fallen nobleman. Arlenne was surprised that her father also realized Kasabin's unusual status. She worried whether her father would sympathize with him or drive him away after knowing the truth. Just then, her father said, "Kasabin came to see me this morning, saying he didn't want to bring more trouble to this family. He asked to be expelled, and he left a letter for you." Arlenne asked, "Father, how did you respond?" He said, "I refused. I will handle it well on my own, so there's no need for that." But he said it was his job to put an end to this and repay the favor he owed you. He is no longer here. He left. On the other side, in a dimly lit house, Kasabin picked up the bottle in front of Candle. It was the medicine that Damian used when he fell ill. Kasabin smelled it, recalling Toll's words. I remember hearing this. Noble blood is needed. He tilted the bottle slightly, and dark red liquid flowed out. He said, that guy didn't lie. The next morning, Arlenne looked at the letter Kasabin left and pondered for a while, deciding not to think about Kasabin anymore. She had many things left unfinished. She instructed to bring Toll along and asked Sasha to tidy up Toll's hair. Trimmed hair made Toll look much neater. At the palace, when the crown prince saw Arlenne approaching, he smiled. This time, Arlenne said she wanted to personally visit Duke Damian to settle Toll's slave documents' formal transfer. She asked the crown prince to provide protection and ensure her safety. The crown prince wanted to accompany her, but recent poisonings and legal battles made it inconvenient for him to appear in public. However, he assured her that he would let everyone know that Arlenne was under royal protection. Damian was very surprised to see Arlenne stepping out of the royal carriage. After a brief greeting, Damian asked about the doctor who restored the severed tongue, and Arlenne thought the bait was taken. She directly revealed her identity as a healer because she felt guilty about what happened at the banquet and was willing to help him heal. Arlenne thought about how she immediately healed his heart in her past life, but in this life, she would never make the same mistake again. She would let him cling to a vain hope, and he wouldn't even know he was taking a chance that would lead him to an abyss. Arlenne suggested demonstrating her ability to him. She said, if you can believe what I am saying, we can forget what happened in the past and make peace? Damian agreed. On the way to the room, Arlenne saw the place where she was killed in her past life. Her heart was beating rapidly. Memories of his cruelty in her past life were vivid in her mind. She felt she might never trust or love anyone again. If she couldn't rid herself of the anxiety he generated in her, then she was going to have to deal with this somehow. Damian opened the door, and Kasabin's smile was as bright as sunlight. But upon closer inspection, the room was empty. Alone with this demon, she only felt an immense longing for Kasabin, longing for his smile and his warm embrace. She shouldn't have let him leave. If she was capable of loving someone again, it could only be with just him. She cried out in her heart, where the hell are you, Kasabin? In the room, Arlenne began to demonstrate her healing ability and told Damian, your illness is too severe. Even I cannot make you recover immediately. Damian said he didn't mind. The healing light flashed from Arlenne's palm. In reality, she was only helping him with pain relief, not treating the illness. This way, she could use the excuse of treating him when he had another episode, thus frequently visiting the Duke's mansion. Damian was astonished to find that his heart no longer hurt and believed in her healing abilities. He reached out his hand, wanting to reconcile with her, and as she took his hand, he said, I would like to get to know you more. Would you be willing to chat with me all night? Having experienced their past lives, Arlenne instantly understood that he saw her value and now wanted to get closer. She stood up, mentioning that it was late and they might attract gossip if they stayed together in the room. Using this as an excuse to leave, she mentioned that the previous treatment didn't completely heal him, and the heart pain might recur before the treatment was completed. Damian asked, can I find you when I have pain symptoms again? Arlenne smiled and said, of course, especially now that we are friends. Damian paused for a moment, then held her hand, saying, yes, let's be friends. He kissed the back of her hand and said meaningfully, starting as friends might be nice. 10 days later, Arlenne tossed and turned in bed. It had been 10 days since she last saw Kasabin, and as time passed, Kasabin became clearer in her memory. He was so similar to her, and she had many things she wanted to say to him and many questions she wanted to ask. Arlenne stood by the window thinking about Kasabin. Suddenly, she heard a familiar sound. She hurried downstairs and arrived in the garden. Sister, a voice called out from behind.